Anytime we're ready? You ready, Mayor?
Sure.
All right. Mayor Goodman, welcome to KTNV. Thanks for coming on.
I'm so excited to be here, and you're looking great, and you look rested, and this is fun.
Well, thanks for saying that. Do you expect me to be nice after you start that way?
I know to watch you very carefully.
Let's talk about the stadium. And I know you have some very strong feelings about Cashman Field. We're going to get to that in a moment. But I'm going to ask you the same question off the top that I asked Commissioner Steve Sisolak, who was on that stadium committee with you, which is you have a couple of billionaires, Sheldon Adelson and Ed Roski, proposing this with the Raiders. I guess what some people might ask is, why should there be 1 cent of public money when you have two guys who could pay for this themselves? What's the argument?
You know, I think you're absolutely right. That would be my ideal, is that they would pay for it. But the thing is, does it have an economic benefit to us here who live here? And absolutely. And if, in fact, they only want to invest this much of their funding, I think it really is a benefit to us that really could spill over into something. And you know, we've talked about it before. We are so ready for major league sports in this town. And I just think it's worth it, especially if it is not taking your property tax or mine, or your sales tax or mine, which of course it wouldn't be doing.
So you see room tax as a different kind of tax because the tourists pay most of it, so it's not as big an issue to you? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm looking at the scale that was given to us as to how does our, here in Southern Nevada, where does our room tax fit on the scale of room taxes in comparable cities that depend on tourism? And we're pretty middle, maybe even a little below middle. Now, we have just made the recommendation to go back to the governor and the legislature to add a half cent for the expansion of the convention center. And so that makes a lot of sense, which would put us at 12.5 on the room tax. This apparently would add anywhere from a full 1 point or maybe 1.5, which would put us obviously then either.
That's high, isn't it? I mean,
well,
that's 13,
not in
14% room tax?
You know, it's
that
interesting.
Sounds high.
Well, I know you're a frequenter of San Diego, and Oscar and I have been 40-year holders of Charger tickets, 40 years, and they are moving that stadium. They want to move downtown as well, and what they're talking about is moving their hotel room tax to 17.9%. So that keeps us still pretty middle when you look at it, and especially if you look at New York or other cities that are comparable for the tourists.
You know, it's interesting because it's obviously a big Goodman family thing to get pro sports here. Your husband talked about it throughout his 12 years. You've talked about it since you've been around. But I guess I guess to play devil's advocate with you, Mayor, it seems like you want it at all costs. Forget about how much public money comes in. You don't really care. You don't really care what the financing plan is as long as we get pro sports here.
Well, I really am passionate about it. I mean, you know, you're absolutely right. Oscar was passionate about it too. First NBA, then there was NHL, and we're right there. You know, I sort of got involved because of the soccer. But, you know, we are 2.1 million people. We have over 200 international direct flights every week. It is what we are. We are a convention city, and we're a tourist city. And as much as the governor and everybody else wants to diversify our economy, those are our sources. So the way I see it is tourists to have a modicum added to that little bit of room tax. It's not hurting us, and all it's going to do is give us who live here or who do business here a bigger bang for the buck.
Well, I guess what some people would say is, you say it's not hurting us. In case people don't remember, you come from a background of being an educator. You started this fantastic private school. You've raised concerns in the past about the public school system.
Yeah,
you could divert some of this room tax money to go for schools, for infrastructure, for social services, instead of for a stadium. And some people who live here might say, you know what, that's a better use of that money. What about that?
Well, if that were possible. Now, you know, out of every dollar that comes in from hotel room tax, back in 1995, there was no funding going to education at all. In 1996, they put into the formula, out of every dollar, a cut for education. It is 39 cents of every dollar as of this past year. 39 cents of every dollar is already cut out of the room tax for education. And from 1995 to this year, we have done nothing but with that more money go further downhill. So I'm very concerned about using the money where it will benefit the whole the most, bring us more business, really hit our safety is, to me, is number one, always the most important thing. And then see other ways. If we become so successful in our education, which we should be able to be doing, we should be, I mean, we came here in '64, Clark County School District was #2 in the country. And it is just taken this dive because we've not been planning well. So I just, I really think this is going to be something that has an overall economic benefit to our community that will help the schools in the end run and help everything that we're doing. I'm so excited about it, John.
I know you are, but I guess what I'm wondering is, you talk about these economic benefits that the stadium's going to bring. You've seen some of the studies. I know you've read about some of this stuff. There's a lot of questions about whether a stadium actually brings economic benefits to a community. There have been horror stories, as you know, in other communities, with taxpayers being left holding the bag after agreeing to pay some of this, whether it's room tax money or something else. Where's the evidence this is going to bring any benefit at all?
Well, if it's Sands and Majestic at this point with this particular pro team, the Oakland Raiders, it seems from everything we've been given in the Tourism Infrastructure Committee that the Majestics and Sands will pick up all those costs. They also want the benefit of the adjunct development pieces where they can maybe build another hotel, build mixed-use properties that will bring more income in, more people coming in to invest in the city, and then from there you get the spill out of more housing, more apartments, all of these
They want
things.
a tax break district, the kind of giveaways that you did downtown, you and your husband did downtown with the redevelopment, creating a tax increment district.
And wasn't that brilliant?
Well, so the developers get all their money back, and that money's taken away from the general fund.
It's just so bad that you're so smart because you give these little feeders, which tell the public this tax increment, this TID district.
Right.
That was on money that doesn't even exist because we didn't have those premium outlets. We got a TID, the tax, this tax tourism and whatever
The
it's
tourism
called.
increment district,
Thank
tax
you.
increment. But the
Which
point,
is income
you're saying the money wasn't
from-
there. Let's be clear on this, though. You're saying if there's no development there, then you're not getting anything. But then you put the development there, and what happens is you divert sales tax and the kinds of taxes you talked about before back to the developers. Why?
We are building a new garage down there because we are so short of space down in that 61-acre area. So the gross, as you know from what's happened from the premium outlets, it's probably the #1 outdoor discount mall in the country. It has been explosive to the point that they really are having a hardship. We're trying to find parking and doing all of this. These new dollars that have come in from this new sales that have been created out of these 30 new stores is going to fund that public parking.
We're talking about a stadium proposed for the Strip, and you're suddenly talking about downtown. How did I let you do that? We're going to get to Cashman Field in a moment,
Yes.
I promise. So I asked Commissioner Sisolak, if it's half public money, would you support it? He said no. Would you support it if it's half public money?
Only if it's tourism, it is the hotel room tax, because
So half of that stadium's paid for by public money. You're okay with it?
if it benefits the whole, and it is
you
all
don't know if
of
it's gonna
money,
benefit
not
the whole.
money out of our pockets. It's not money out of, it's room tax money that will come from those who choose to visit Las Vegas and leave. So every time you fill the stadium with 65,000 people, many of them are going to come in here, spend maybe 5 or 6 days. We'll put money in the hotel, which will give us the
They're
room
full
tax
on the weekends
and
anyhow,
spend.
though. The hotels are full on the
but
weekends,
you know,
right?
the football season, but it's not only going to be football. There are only 10 home games on an average, 8 to 10.
Right.
They've
8
got to
regular, 2
find other
preseason.
ways. So my wonderful franchise for soccer will have to be absorbed into that to fill time. They'll have these other venues coming in, you know, entertainment. They're going to want the Beyoncés and the other great, the Barbara Streisands of this world that could fill the T-Mobile 50 times over because she's such a magnificent star. And so what we see are the benefits of all these activities going on there, but spilling over to the entire small area. You know, when you look at all all the cities and most of the airports, except for San Diego, which we love, the airport's 45 minutes out of town, at least, if not more. Ours is just as close as it is in San Diego. You've got 10 minutes and you've got 155,000 hotel rooms to fill.
You are basically saying what I thought was your position, which is the public money is really not an issue to you at all.
No.
Because you don't think it's gonna be
It's
a
not
detriment.
public resident money. I protect the people who live here and this community.
Because it's room tax money, it's tourist
money.
It could be 100% funded by that.
Well, except for the fact that cost is way, I mean, then you'd have to keep incrementally raising the room tax. There comes a
But you don't
point
think
where
that's
you
an
don't want to
issue.
be.
You just don't think it's an issue.
I think as long as we are wide open with this, there might be something new. I know we were talking about a new venture, and I said, well, as far as I'm concerned, if in fact the public wants recreational marijuana, which does not exist, that tax needs to go to safety. You're trying to find a new source of money, not to hit the resident that calls his home or the business person who may live here and invest here. We've got to always keep our eyes open because we don't want personal income tax. Look at California. Look at New York. The city income tax, state income tax, plus federal. We don't have any of that.
Are you for recreational pot? I didn't get that.
Well, I
you
can't
for that?
say I am. No, I'm not.
You're not for it?
No.
All right. Let's talk about
But
Cash.
that's just personally.
No, I know. Let's talk Cashman Field.
Yes, let's.
You have continued to make the case that Cashman Field is the best place, even though most of the places being proposed, including what they're focusing on now, the Bally High Golf Course, are all out there in the county.
Yes.
Steve Sisolak essentially was somewhat, I thought, patronizing, saying essentially everyone's being respectful of the mayor, but no one wants that.
Yes.
Nobody else in the committee wants that except you. You were a lone wolf. Nobody wants to put it at Cashman Field.
I've been a lone wolf before, you know that.
Yeah.
But the reality is the resort corridor is the heartbeat of our community, but we're a very tight-knit community. All southern Nevada is pretty cohesive and in the same area. And actually, from the top of the strip of the resort corridor on the south to Cashman's 3.5 miles. It's nothing. I mean,
why
for
there?
a runner.
Why would all these hotels raise their room tax rates to help out downtown Las Vegas?
Well, because it's the whole community benefit. The one thing that I see more than anything else is this is an area that already is in place, that they could go, we could be open if they could have the building done. We could be open in the fall of 18. Because we have, it's the only place where the I-15 and the 95 intersect. You've got that. We have Project Neon, which is unspaghettiing the spaghetti bowl, where we have over 300,000 cars going through it every day already. We have a circulator that's planned to go into effect very soon, moving people freely around the downtown, which hooks in with the RTC. We have 50 acres that's already available. We have another 23 adjacent that could be committed. We have over 25,000 parking spaces. And the beauty of it all is the only governing body that whoever develops this, the private sector, is city council. We're 7 cohesive people in a city of 600,000.
But nobody else wants it, Mayor. I mean,
well,
that wasn't even in their top tier of sites.
Well, they're hotel people.
Is that your lack of persuasive ability? Why couldn't you get that higher in the sites?
You know what's going to happen?
What's that?
Is when the reality comes to bear and they look at it carefully. It really was because in the initial, 2.5 years ago, I believe it was about, I first went to Mr. Adelson when we were working on the soccer, and I said, wouldn't you like to invest in a stadium? And, you know, I'm always out there trying to sell
What did he
the
say
city.
to you?
He said, no, and he said, if I build anything for any major league sport, I would build a stadium. I don't want to own a team. And I said, well, we're ready now if you'd be interested in downtown. And he said, no, I want to stay out in the corridor.
So you've just answered your own question. He's not going to invest in something downtown.
Well, but that doesn't, when you look at the pluses and the lack of encumbrances on something that's already ready.
You have to convince him.
No. Well,
But
in time, because he's a very bright man, and he does have a wonderful group of people, and especially Craig Cavalier, who's been down this path a few times, sees the advantage when you start to add up and go through those matrices. That
So you think that all the other sites outside of the city are
There's
going to
not
fall
a
by the
chance.
wayside? Not a chance.
No, the one or two. I think the Fertitta piece, which is 100 acres,
That's
would
the
be
Wild
a good
West
side.
piece,
Yeah.
so-called.
Now, the only thing that I see on that why would the Fertittas want to go ahead and not have the total private development control themselves?
I guess what I'm wondering is, will you still support this even if it's not in the city?
Everything I do, I recommend out to the
Because
county.
you're not
see
the mayor of the
whole.
Strip, you know. You do know that.
We'd
you know?
like to. Didn't you hear on July, what was it, April Fool's Day, we cut a tape, and I said, we've annexed the county.
Yeah, that's
So-
what all mayors dream of doing. All right,
But the
we're gonna-
reality is all the other sites have issues with having very large complexes under flight pattern. And then you have BLM land too, and long leases. And with Steve Wynn's property, were you to go into that piece, and I understand he's looking perhaps at putting in a lake rather than the golf course.
Right.
Now you have to rip down the whole monorail that circles. You have to start tearing down to get there. There's no access of Phoenix to Las Vegas, Los Angeles to Utah, except in the downtown area.
have you had any recent meetings about Cashman Field with any of these folks?
We were to have one again this morning to make this presentation, so they have the statistical nuances of everything.
To the Sands people?
To the Majestic Sands
They're just
group.
paying you lip service, though. Come on, you're
No,
smart.
no,
You're a smart
no,
woman.
we
You went to
have it.
some
It's gonna
college
go.
back east, Bryn Mawr, I think, or something. You're supposed to be smart. They're patronizing you. You know that.
No.
They're not. They're just. They're being
They're
respectful.
going to go down when you start dealing with private to private and buying property. Then you know, Steve Sisolak keeps bringing up a very good point. When Craig Cavalier said that everything on the confines of the site of the stadium, they will pay for. They meaning the Majestic Sands.
Right.
And Steve Sisolak keeps saying, I'm not talking about what's on the site, I'm talking about access to come there, flyover, roads improvement, access, parking, all this stuff. And he's so right, because on all of them, on every single one of these properties, the extra infrastructure is enormous. The cost, not
right.
Downtown.
We don't have that much time, but just let's end the discussion of the stadium this way. There's a timeline problem here now. You know it's getting, the NFL owners meet in
read your
January.
blog.
Okay. So
And I absolutely agree with you. Life is timing, and occasionally who you know. This better be resolved, and they better put the pencil to the numbers quickly, and they will see the only place to put it is downtown. Downtown isn't far, but everything's in place. We don't have to be building. We will build to add more.
Are you
but
are you really this much of a dreamer, or are you just totally delusional that you actually believe
I've been
they're going to go to
drinking the
Cashman?
Kool-Aid.
You've been drink-
Absolutely.
But I still can't get past what you just said, that you read my post on so I'm glad you agree with me. Let's talk about a couple other subjects real
Yes.
quickly. And I mentioned education, which you're still very passionate about. Big debate in this state now, and it's pending before the court, has to do with the school choice bill that was passed that was passed by the legislature. $5,000, anybody in Nevada is eligible for it. Was that a good law they passed?
First of all, when I was a little girl, I was taught there was a separation of church and state. So that's number one. Number two, $5,000, and you know, because of your child, you have to pay. $5,000 doesn't get you into a parochial school.
Oh, you're
That
just talking about
doesn't-
expensive places like the Meadows, which is way overpriced, isn't it?
Well, all of them. All I
see.
can tell you, private. But even when you look at the charter schools, you begin to look at that. And if there's a charter school that's outside the realm of the government, $5,000 doesn't do anything.
So you think they should have offered
to do.
more money in that than that law?
Well, I think we have so much to do with public education here, and the vouchers, if we could just fix the system that is, why keep throwing more money at it, fix it, and we have an opportunity
So do you
right
support the
now.
law or not? I didn't hear a yes or
What,
no.
the voucher?
Yeah.
No, I do not.
You do not support
Not as the way it's written currently, one, for the funding, two, it mixes. You really should be a separation of church and
Okay.
state.
All right. Another issue that came up recently is Betsy Fretwell, who's the city manager, who's someone I've known for a couple of decades, one of the best government staffers. But now you guys have given her a raise. She's making $266,500, I think.
I wish I were paid that.
Yeah, more than that. Isn't that what the mayor's paid? More.
No, the
Yeah, I
mayor's
know.
not paid that.
But that's more than the county manager. Is there something going wrong? Is there an imbalance in the system here?
You know, first of all, it's very important, I think, for all people, if they're worth their salt, to at least be in the range of comparable programs, departments throughout the country.
She makes more than the county manager. The county manager has much more responsibility than Betsy Fretwell.
But the county manager has so many more fingers in so many different pots, but she is the one who works every one of these pots.
You don't think that's ridiculous?
No, and we only have her. We haven't even quite hit the middle salary for her. She hasn't had a raise, an actual raise, in 18 months. And so, you know, to me, with her devotion, her 24/7 work that she has done, pulling us through that recession well ahead of any other government. I mean, she started tightening our belts in 08. So I think she's fabulous.
Finally, I want to ask you about the presidential race. You recently were interviewed by the New York Times.
Yes.
And they asked you who you were voting for in the presidential race. You seem to have absolutely no passion at all to vote for Hillary Clinton. None, huh? You don't like her.
You know, I find the issue, I was brought up a certain way. We are who we are because of our experiences in life, our education, and what we've done through life. And the one thing that was already passed on to me as a youngster, and I've passed it on to our children, hopefully to our grandchildren, you are nothing but your word. And when you leave this world, they will say Jon Ralston was a man of integrity and total truth.
You think she's dishonest?
I would question many of the, what I have found out about her as being truthful. I think she's passionate about wanting this job.
But you don't trust her. You're like a lot of Americans in those polls. You don't trust her. Isn't that right?
Sad?
That's true, though, right?
Yeah.
What about Trump?
I was asked, who am I supporting? And I said neither of the above.
Why not Trump?
Well, you know what I thought about Bernie. I loved his honesty. Everything in his past is consistent. Hillary's this. Donald is like this all of a sudden, and then he's there, and then he's there, and I don't know where Donald is half the time, and he's picking on people that there's no reason for it. I mean, people who have differences or who've been in service. I mean, you hear it out of his own mouth.
So who do you support?
My honest hope is that one of them would resign and there will be an appointment made. I wouldn't have minded Joe Biden. I would have fought for him in a second. I would certainly, if Donald Trump resigned and there was...
So you want somebody to replace Trump so you could
Well,
support.
if in fact he doesn't prove himself, they both have another 2 months to prove themselves to the
But you couldn't vote for either of them?
No, I could not. Right now I could not. And yet I say to myself, it's my responsibility as an individual in this country who's a citizen of this country to vote. And I can't. I can't vote.
Final question.
Yes.
Since I'm a gentleman, I'm not going to mention how old you would be when you had to run for re-election in 2019, but it's a big birthday for you.
1939. Just go ahead and add it up.
My mother's having that birthday this year. We're having a big
Is she?
celebration for
I
her.
do.
You still love the job? You think you might run for re-election again?
I love it every day of my life. We have so many great people here, and it's such fun. Look at the questions you've been asking me.
You think you might run for re-election?
I know.
You know. All right. Mayor Goodman, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I hope you'll come back soon. Thanks for coming on KTNV.
Love having you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.